So normally all my videos either entail tractors or me drumming. I'm trying something a little bit different this time. So I have this really old snare. I probably got it when I was 11. I'm 35 now, so I've had it for 24 years. It was a couple years old when I got it. I have no idea what brand it was. It used to have one of these mufflers inside that was screwed on here, but it got damaged and fell apart, so I took it out years ago. The snare throw off on this one actually works well, even though it's a really cheap one. And it's a 6-lug snare, so you know it's pretty inexpensive. Had it forever, but I don't know what brand it is. So I reheaded it a few years ago, but it still sounds pretty crummy. What I want to try to do to that thing is take all the hardware off it, take the hoops off of it, and I actually want to use polyurethane on the inside of it because it's a wood snare. Sand it down, redo the bearing edges on it with some sandpaper to get them to work better. Then I have this 30-wire Gibraltar stainless steel snare, grease for the lugs, so when I put it back together, it'll go back together well. And again, the new muffler. If I need any parts, I have this snare that is from my original drum set that I bought. It's a Mapex 14x6 or 14x6.5 inch Venus steel snare. I've had that one for a long time. It's never really sounded that good. That one, the snare throw off on it is really messed up. Both of these just have a standard 10-wire stainless steel snare. So this is the project. I'm going to take it apart, clean it up real good, urethane the snot out of the inside of it, hopefully to make it a little bit more reflective for sound and a little bit stronger because it's cheap wood. Like I said, sand the bearing edges, grease all the lugs, put it all back together, and see how it sounds. So I just realized that you probably all want to hear a before and after video, so pretty ringy. And you can tell it's out of tune. I'll let you know how it sounds when I'm done. So I got it all apart. Here's a bag of very rusty hardware, bunch of mismatched different types of screws, Phillips head, bolts and flatheads. The snare side head, which is actually really good shape. That one's not very old, so I'm going to reuse that. The top head I had put on this is an attack drum head, 1-ply medium coated. To me, this is actually a pretty thick, heavy head. Terry Bozzio's signature edition. To be honest, I never really liked this head, and it's not too beaten up. It's a little bit beaten up, but I don't have any new ones, so I'm either going to use that one or I have this Weather King Renaissance head that I really like that's on my other snare, but a lot of the coating's off of it, so I'm not sure which one I'm going to use. This is the hoop, the actual drum. It had been redone once before. You can see there's an outline of square hardware on here, and then kind of the oblong shaped one, and then the 2 steel hoops. So I got it all apart. I gotta sand this guy, do the bearing edges on it, clean the inside of it up, sand that, and give it like 6 coats of urethane. Try to give it a nice shine, probably sand it in between a couple of the coats. Bearing edge on this thing, it's not bad. It almost looks like it had been waxed in a couple of spots, but it's definitely not even. There's a lot of high spots and stuff in it, so I'm gonna do it by hand, try to get it as best I can. And then I haven't decided if I'm gonna leave the black wrap on it or not. I probably will, just because my my drum kit's black now. So I'll let you guys know how it looks. That's much better. I'm using 220. That's really what I had. I think it'll be fine. It's still a heck of a lot better than it was. So I've got 2 coats of urethane on this right now. I'm using this Moonwax fast drying polyurethane clear gloss, mainly because I think the gloss would be better for what I'm trying to do. And again, I mean, I'm trying to seal the inside of this drum and kind of give it a hard surface so that the sound reflects a little better. I have no idea if it's actually going to work. It does look pretty nice. So as the urethane's drying, I mean, there's not much that looks better than natural wood with a good finish on it. So it dripped a little bit down on the bottom, but I've been rotating the drum so it'll hopefully dry a little bit more evenly. I let this dry for about another hour, and then I'll put a third coat on and see how it looks after that. So I have the snare shell all urethaned. It's not quite as shiny as I'd wanted to, but if I wanted to take the time I could sand it and urethane it a couple more times, but I don't have the patience for that. I got a bunch of overspray on the outside of it that I'm going to try to get off after I put it back together. I just don't want to put pressure on it because there's nothing structurally holding it together. But I'll show you guys more video once I get it bolted together. So I got it all back together. You can see I put all brand new hardware inside. Looks great. I have a Weather King Ambassador on top, which isn't really usually a snare batter head, but it's got a nice ping to it. Got the muffler installed inside. And I put a Gibraltar 40 wire snare on the bottom. The only problem is the snare throw off on this thing doesn't, even though I've tightened up the snare a few times, there's a couple of the snare wires that still buzz after I stop. So even with this very tight, there's a few wires that buzz, which drives me nuts, so I might have to put a smaller snare wire on. It has a very high pitched tone. I like the way it sounds, I just got to figure out the snare wire. So I'll give you guys a little bit of what the new snare, redone snare sounds like. Sounds a lot better than it used to. I love the tone of it. The only problem is the snare wires, because I have a 40 wire snare on there, actually are causing it to buzz when I hit the toms. So this is my pearl snare here. I might try putting a 40 wire on this guy and see how it sounds. Maybe it'll work better being a steel snare. I really have no idea, but let's see what the wood one sounds like now anyway. So. Hear the buzz. So I finished up my snare project. As you can see, this is my pearl snare that came with my 7-piece kit that I just bought, my Vision set. I put the Gibraltar 40 wire snare on that one and retuned it. That thing sounds amazing. So I basically did 2 turns off of just barely tensioned on the bottom, and I did about 1.5 on the top. This has an Evans dry head on it. So HD dry, which sounds amazing. And then this crummy snare that I just finished redoing, I put my Pearl 20 wire snare on here, which is kind of a coppery color. So it's a little bit more mellow of a snare, but I tuned that snare really tight. So let me give you guys an idea on what they sound like. So starting off first with my Pearl snare, just to give you an idea how it sounds now. And again, it's tough to do a comparison on it from what it used to be, mainly because I never really did just a snare video with my new kit. I just basically played my kit, but that's my pearl snare. Let me switch it out and I'll put my snare project on there, the wooden one that I just finished. So again, this has a 20 wire pearl snare wire on it now. I have an Ambassador Weather King head on it, which is basically a beater head for a 14-inch tom. But I tuned it way up. So the bottom head is about 2 1/4 turns, 2 1/2 turns. And the top head is a little over 2 turns. So it's really tight, it's really high pitched, and with the snare wire that's on it, I think it sounds pretty good. It's hard for me to tell which one I like better. The wooden snare has a great tone to it now. I think part of the problem was I just never really tuned it well before. And honestly, without having a coated head on it, I think it sounds way better than it did before. The coated head I was trying to tune it really tight and it was too dry, so I couldn't really get the sound I wanted out of it. I really like the way it sounds now. I really like the way my pearl snare sounds, so it's going to be a tough choice for me to pick whichever one I want to play with. But that's it. It's my snare review for my last 2 projects.